I have a petition with the FDA that was accepted in 2007 to ban fluoride infusions into public water supplies for the U.S. And so I got a call after about a month after they had it, and they said, "Congratulations," on the telephone. I go, "Oh, so you're going to ban fluoride for the country?" And they started laughing. And they go, no, we mean congratulations. This is about the 30th petition to ban fluoride that we've received over the years, but yours had all the required elements, so it's going to be reviewed by the committee." I said, "Oh, okay." But then 3 years later, in 2010, they said, "Well, this is a toxic fluoride calcium chelator they're adding to the water." This is the FDA talking on the phone and in writing as well. And they said, "Well, that's the EPA's job to regulate." But then I found out from a friend who's a lawyer in Seattle.
Can you talk louder?
I'll try. But I found out from a friend in Seattle who was a lawyer. He said what you have to do is contact the FDA and apply for appeal. And so sure enough, they called me the next morning, the FDA, to explain that it was the EPA's job. And I told them, well, the EPA doesn't regulate it, though, because I've already talked to the EPA and they want nothing to do with it. And so what do you suggest now? Because the CDC says that they don't accept liability because they view it as a supplement. And supplements are regulated by you guys, the FDA. So that actual person confessed that she never read the petition, but she was in charge of it, which I thought was a nice bout of honesty. And then she said, well, what you have to do is apply for a petition for reconsideration. So I did that. And there must have been 1 million people praying for me. I can't explain it, because in a month's time, I had 1 month, and that was it. Or the whole petition would be thrown in the trash. And the stuff that came out of my head, I couldn't believe. I wrote a 100-page treatise on why the FDA was responsible for it and the EPA was not. All these laws, I just magically found all this stuff in time, shipped it off, and so that's been there for another 3 years. So that it's still pending. So hopefully they'll one day wise up and just ban it for the whole country. Because you guys are in San Diego, not North County, I took a quick look this morning at the San Diego Water Quality Report. The latest one they have is 2011, and your water has up to 115 parts per million, at least in the Otay reservoir, of the sodium that comes from the Drano that they add to the fluorosilicics. You have to dump that in, or it would dissolve the water pipes. So we have a sodium issue. Like in North County, when it was this high, the avocados didn't grow with normal productivity. But that was when the water was 1 part per million. We had this same issue with 100, but then when they lowered it to 0.7, it chamfered down back to about 80 parts per million sodium. And so the avocados are basically okay now. But fresh water shouldn't have any sodium in it. So the Otay, I don't know why it's this high, because the water was lowered to 0.7 for the fluoride. I checked it. There's also issues with uranium in all of Southern California, but our water is worse than your guys' for that. So there's some trihalomethanes that have exceeded the EPA's allowed MCL again at Otay. And what else do I want to say here? Well, the issue, especially with old homes, they found that about 6% of homes in certain areas of San Diego have lead levels that are above the EPA allowed maximum level, but that's again because of fluoridation. Because if you have an old home that used to have lead-based plumbing in it, when they fluoridate the water, it leaves the silicic acid as an intact molecule, even at alkaline pH, and that dissolves lead-based salt in lead-based plumbing. And so in Carlsbad, when that happened, they had lead like 10 times higher than the EPA allowed maximum. Everybody freaked out. It was at a school district drinking fountain, so they replaced the drinking fountain. It was an old one, and that fixed it. The silicic acid that's in the water from the fluorosilicic that they use for the fluoride is dissolving lead out of old plumbing. So California, it's illegal now to use lead-based plumbing, fortunately. That was just another issue to bring up. These are the chemicals that are added. Here's the Drano, sodium hydroxide. That's the source of all the sodium. And then fluorosilicic acid is the hazardous waste that's obtained from fertilizer industries. It's waste for them, but they call it a byproduct because they sell it to cities for cavity reduction. And so they say it's no longer a waste, it's now a product. But notice it produces intact silicic acid, which dissolves lead from the plumbing, plus the fluoride and the sodium. Well, the deal about fluoride removal is it's really difficult because fluoride, see the fluorine atom is about this size if you blew it up into a microscope and looked at it, compared to the fluoride ion, which is about this size. It blows up when it receives an electron. So fluorine doesn't exist in nature because it's too reactive. It would just react with anything it touches. You can only see that in a laboratory. And so the fluoride ion is found in nature as natural calcium fluoride. But the fluoride ion in water, here's a water molecule behind it, and the fluoride ion is the sphere in front of it. You can see how similar in size they are, and that's the trouble. You can't just filter out fluoride. You can't boil it out. There's nothing you could do. Pardon me? Distillation, yeah. If you boil it and collect the gas again, which is distillation, then other stuff's left behind in the pot. I'll show you some pictures of what I did with that. But reverse osmosis was developed in 1950 by the Navy, and it was perfected at UCLA. And reverse osmosis was used for all the Navy ships. They could make hundreds of thousands of gallons of drinkable water from ocean water since the 50s. But it doesn't really take out fluoride effectively, at least the original prototype, the original type that they used. But now these engineers, particularly this group I know in Vista, they developed, because they knew fluoride was coming to Southern California, they developed a new type of RO that has a super tiny pore size on the order of like 0.27 nanometers. And so even the fluoride is retained. It's about like this size, the pore. So the fluoride can't get through the hole, but the water, because it's under pressure, the water can squeeze through sideways, like a little hot dog. So they've been able to achieve separation of the fluoride from the drinking water at these machines like in North County we have them, they're called glacier water or aquafill water. Those all use this new type of RO system that removes all the fluoride. Or at least I can't detect it, which means it's less than 0.05 parts per million.
And you know, like these other ones,
Culligan used to be okay, and now they don't work, and I called them and asked them why, and they said, well, the supplier we had, they're out of business, and we don't use that kind anymore. Yeah, so the modern Culligans, they haven't caught on. But now, if you go to Home Depot, they have the newest RO that's just like these ones, and it's made by General Electric, and it's called the GE Profile. It sells for like $160, and you can put it under your sink. That takes out all the fluoride. No, it's actually better than bone char in that sense. I like the bone char, but I have bone char in my house to suck out the fluoride because animal bones do it, and you don't have to. But the RO I think is better because it lasts longer. The General Electric Profile. Yeah. There's another unit, because I have a lot of students that I help at Palmar that bring in their water samples, and I know there's another unit of RO that's at Costco, but I don't know the brand name of it. But it's probably the main one that Costco sells. Is also a good one. No, they don't, for some reason, get into that. I think it's the politics. You know, you start mentioning the F word, and too many people just get mad. And then the only thing about the RO is you should also use, activated carbon filters in front of that to remove organic material, because there's a lot of things that RO will not remove, like especially the small organic molecules like radiator fluid or carburetor cleaner, or not that there's very much in our water supply. There isn't, but there's going to be soon if they get their way and use industrial water to put it into the reservoir.
Does that GE RO have the activated carbon for it?
No. So you have to do that separate, but they're pretty inexpensive. And what else? All that takes out all the activated carbon would take out the chloramines and all the halomethanes and all those. Because in OTI, I looked at the report this morning, they have a halomethane residue that was above the allowed EPA NCL. I think they put this stuff in there and they don't even pay attention to their own numbers.
Well, and isn't that,
another factor would just be operator error too, besides what you're talking about, the biochemical interaction with iron, or with the lead pipe. Or, operator error that they don't turn the handle off when they're supposed to, or the equipment fails or something like that.
Yeah, well,
then you have deaths in communities.
I was asked to get involved with this latest project at Miramar where they're taking wastewater. They used to call it toilet to tap, but it's really wastewater to RO that they want to dump into the reservoir, and it's already been approved by the former mayor to happen. The only trouble is when you look at all the listings of the stuff that is removed from the water, it looks really impressive because thousands of things are removed by the RO procedure, but I didn't care about that. I wanted to know, what about the levels for the things that RO can't remove? And so I looked at the sheet, and sure enough, all the things that I was suspicious about, they weren't being removed. Carburetor fluid, cleaning fluid, or radiator fluid, stuff like that. But then I was shocked because it had some iodide in there, which should have been removed by RO, so I think they had a tear in the membrane or something. So operator error, you're right. You have to continuously monitor those big, giant, industrial-sized RO units because they can get a tear and have stuff leak out. But the most disturbing thing was, of course, you can't remove tritium water. And so they cut me off and refused to talk to me anymore when I pointed out that the tritium water level was as high as the wastewater from the San Onofre nuclear facility. And I go, where are you getting this wastewater from anyway? That it's this high. And then they stopped talking to me. But they were planning to dump this right into the San Vicente Reservoir. And so there's nothing you can do about that if they do that. Because even distillation can't get rid of tritium water. It's just H2O, but it's radioactive. So at that point I gave up going to the Earth Fair meetings at Balboa Park because I knew I didn't have any answers for that. It's locked. So all we can do there is just hope that they don't do it. This is what happens when you take a liter of fluoridated water and boil it down to about the size of that little cup. It turns white, looks like milk. And that's because I suspected it would happen because calcium fluoride is not very soluble in water. And I boiled it down, and sure enough, it all turns white because the calcium and the fluoride in the water, calcium's not a soluble mineral. And so what I did is this is when I had just purchased my bone char filter, and I ran the same water through a bone char filter, and that's down here on this one. Notice when I boil it down to the same size, it's still clear. So the bone char removed the fluoride, which was the ingredient that was making the water milky. This here is a picture of this cup after I sat it down for a while and let the stuff sink to the bottom. These are all solid particles of calcium fluoride that normally your kidneys have to remove. As opposed to if you defluorate it first with bone char, it's not there. And this is water that was not fluoridated at the time in Encinitas with the same treatment. Because it's not fluoridated, the particles aren't there. So it's really in there, unfortunately. These are two of the key findings in the paper that I just published at the Journal of Environmental and Public Health. American journals refused to publish it, but Chemical and Engineering News at least said it needed to be published. And they encouraged me to keep at it. And Dr. Benson, he's 95 now, and he still works in his lab at Scripps Oceanography. And he says, well, what have you published on the fluoridation of San Diego material? And then I felt like, a 2-foot-tall failure. I'm going, well, I've been trying. The American journals don't want to hear it. So this is a journal in India, but it's a worldwide publication that goes all over, PubMed and all these other data agencies that monitor journal articles. But what I did is I just calculated the amount of fluoride that would cause calcium to precipitate as a function of different calcium concentrations. And the blood region, the blood zone here where calcium levels are for the blood range from about here to down here. So these are the fluoride levels that would cause instant death. And so what happened was I needed this because of the Hooper Bay disaster. I started writing this article in '94 when the Hooper Bay disaster occurred, and that was the biggest fluoridation water disaster in the country. That's where the Yukon River doesn't have any protective calcium in it. But the fluoridating people don't understand that, and they fluoridated it to 1 part per million, and it worked for a couple of years okay without anybody getting killed. Then what happened is it destroyed the water pump valve. It got up to 100 parts per million in the water, and there happened to be a person who was just dying of thirst at that time, and he drank a lot of water, and he got killed, and 300 other people somehow escaped. Their blood fluoride levels were high enough that it should have killed them, but they lived. They were all life-flighted to the hospital. The bizarre thing is, you want a lot of calcium in your GI tract to protect you from fluoride poisoning because it will prevent it from being assimilated, but it's the opposite problem inside the blood. When you look inside the blood, people with a high calcium level will take less fluoride to get killed. So it's strange for fluoride. It just doesn't belong in anyone's body. It's just the way it is. And this is what happens to everyone. This only happens during fluoride overfeed. You can't get this kind of level until you had a really disastrous overfeed. So, because the water fluoridators know that, they've now used sophisticated electronic gadgetry to make sure nobody gets killed when they fluoridate the water. So this won't happen, I don't think, anymore. But this is what happens to everyone anyway. You know, in the stomach where the pH is acidic down around right here, almost all the fluoride is in the form of hydrofluoric acid here. There's no fluoride left. It all converts to HF. HF is the stuff that dissolves glass when you have it concentrated enough. But people with ulcers or people with carcinoma of the stomach, they should never be drinking fluoridated water because of the HF. It prevents ulcers from being healed. 7% of people have stomach pain just drinking targeted levels of fluoridated water. And that's been documented in a whole host of studies. But it's from the HF. This is how fluoride gets into the blood, because it's converted to this tiny molecule HF, which has no charge, and it scoots right through the membrane. This is what happens to people. This was in the 50s in England, where 1 part per million fluoridated water was what they lived on here for their whole lifetime, 60, 70 years. These people lived at 2 parts per million. Well, this is before fluoridated toothpaste was ever invented. So, and these were natural fluoridated water supplies. And what happens is at the end of your life, if you get up to like 3,000 parts per million, these guys, they have weakened bones now. This is the accumulation of fluoride into the bone that's permanent. And above 3,000, stress tests prove that the bone breaks easy. And so nothing else gets you. I mean, a fall and a broken hip will get you if you live your whole life on fluoridated water. But we probably are going to be experiencing the people that have this when they live their whole lives on fluoridated water, because we also have the toothpaste issue. That most people use fluoridated toothpaste. That's responsible for about 25% of all the fluoride that ends up in your blood comes from toothpaste in a fluoridated state. So they're going to be even much higher, even though we only use 1 part per million and now 0.7 in the water. If you want a good exhibit, I use this for my brother-in-law because he always thought the F word was just stupid, making a mountain out of a molehill. Until one day we just happened to be at the Balboa Museum of Man at Balboa Park, and we saw the bone exhibit of a person who died of fluoritic bone. Here's a normal leg bone. See how smooth and clean and shiny it is? This is a person who died of a leg bone that was because he died of bone fluorosis. But all the calcium fluoride just makes these little spicules stick out of the bone. And if you have it, if you eat it chronically for a long enough time period, you get to this state where your muscles can't even slide, your tissues can't slide along the bone without severe pain. So these people have to stop. They can't do anything. They just lay in bed until they die. And that's the end state for. Once you get up to 8,000 parts per million fluoride, which has happened to this person, that's it. So it's just that all along in here, where it's not causing detectable weakening, it's still causing these little bone growth and things to happen that are unnatural. I tried to explain that to the Metropolitan Water District the day before they fluoridated, but they didn't care. It was already pre-decided. These are a lot of the things that people commonly drink in California that I measured the fluoride level in. But you guys are already pretty set up for knowing what kind of beverages and things to eat. But a cool thing is, I checked watermelon juice that was raised in a fluoridated area because I wasn't convinced that plants could keep all the fluoride out because it's so tiny. But yet, it's really the HF that enables it to get through the membrane. So most plants don't take up the fluoride, even in a fluoridated seed. I checked watermelon juice and sure enough, it was 0. Yeah.
One report I read said that if the plant is being watered through the soil, it made a bigger difference.
Yeah, tea leaves are really bad. That for some reason do take up fluoride from natural fluoride soil. But most plants reject it. You're right, unless you spray it on directly. But I doubt that there'd be, that big of a quantity actually taken inside the plant by just spraying on the water. And all you have to do is, like, most people buy their veggies at, Albertsons and places like that, where they have these water sprayers with free water sprayed on it after they've grown. Well, just take that and rinse it all off with defluoridated water, and it should be fine. No, not when it's not. Yeah. And this is the thing I'm getting published soon in the journal Fluoride. They wanted to see this data. This is what happens to the racehorses at the Los Alamitos racetrack. In 2005, before fluoridated water came to LA, the death rate for horses in their 181 racing day season was about 38 horse deaths per year. And then fluoridation came along, and I was concerned about it, so I started monitoring it really carefully. And sure enough, when fluoridation started around here in 2007, it started to climb, and it's never really gone down since then. But the worst year was right here. There was, like 102 horses that died just that one racing season when fluoride was at 1 part per million. And then the Health and Human Services in 2011 recommended that the level be lowered to 0.7. And I kept hounding Metropolitan, kept measuring the fluoride level. I go, look, it's still at 1. Are you saying that you know more than Health and Human Services? Finally, a month later, they finally lowered it to 0.7 for all of the LA basin, including this racetrack, and then the horse deaths now are right here. So it pretty much follows the level of fluoride in the water. But I think it's because in horses, they drink so much water, 35 gallons a day, they turn over their body water every week, whereas a human would take like a month. And so they're exposed to like 9 times as much fluoride per pound than a human is from the same drinking water. And I think it's, it just obviously incorporates into their bones. And, what I found is in all my research, I had to become knowledgeable about horses when I started into this. So I've learned that 90% of racehorses race with an ulcer. And it's blamed on, the tension and the pressure. They're always being encouraged to win. They're always in this crowded field of other riders that are also trying to win. And it's stress. And so they have these ulcers. But for years and years, I used to work at the Del Mar racetrack as a busboy. There was never a horse death there the years that I worked there ever. So even with the ulcers, they're minor enough that it didn't really affect the industry. But now it is, I think, because of the HF. All the HF in the stomach at the same pH as ours, all that HF is bathing these ulcers all the time. And can you imagine having heartburn as a horse racing as fast as you can around a turn? I mean, one little misstep, break a little sesamoid bone, and that's it. Your career's over. You're euthanized, and I think that's what's happening here. So that's being reviewed, like I say now, by the journal, but they are being really really stubborn about every little dinky little syllable I have in this article. So it's going to be a while before it's published, but hopefully we'll get done. I don't know, any questions?
So can you explain, you were talking earlier about first of all, how do you measure the fluoride in the water? What do you use?
Well, I use a Lamont Industries ion-specific fluoride electrode. It only senses fluoride in the solution, nothing else. It can't register any other item but the fluoride.
And what level does it measure to?
Down to 0.05.
And why? And explain why you were saying that's sufficient.
Oh, well, my argument was that, the recent data that I think is most reliable, that directly answers the question best, is the stuff that came out of the University of Washington. It was a kidney doctor that suddenly, after fluoridation started, all these kidney doctors had to become water purification experts to get the fluoride out of it. Because when you don't have any kidneys and you can't remove the fluoride, all the stuff that's infused into you is in you. And it stays there at that whatever level's in the water. And so we had a lot of kidney deaths when there was an overfeed, of course, even at only 50 parts per million. Guadalupe Bay was like over 100. But kidney patients died in Chicago and in Maryland from a slight overfeed because they didn't have kidneys that could. So all these doctors have learned that they can't use fluoridated water at all. And so what they do is they defluoridate the water as best they can with different methods so that they can use it in their hemodialysis units on their kidney wards, and so the patients don't get killed. But the reason that their recommendation is as long as the water level is below 0.2 with the fluoride, the patients can tolerate it, and that's when it's directly infused into their bloodstream. So, like our Colorado River is 0.2. If these drug pushers would just leave it alone, it would be 0.2.
Naturally occurring 0.2.
Yeah, naturally occurring from calcium fluoride. So there's like a 300 to 1 ratio of calcium to fluoride in the Colorado River, which is why it's not assimilated enough that I wouldn't worry about it.
Because the calcium protects you from assimilating the fluoride.
Yeah, and even if it didn't, a 0.2 level like in Seattle where they don't have any calcium, the 0.2 level usually leads to about maybe 0.04 in the blood if you didn't have fluoridated water. But with fluoridated water, of course, their level is higher than the blood level of San Diego's now. San Diego's probably an average of 0.2 in the blood. Seattle is going to be higher because there's no protective calcium. But if the water level was 0.05, that's 4 times smaller even than the natural level. It's just not anything I would overly be that afraid of. So, because the blood levels are what really matter. If you have a blood level of 0.2, like most people have now, you can live a reasonable life. My guess is, from animal data that we have, is your lifespan will be shortened 10%, which is pretty bad, pretty drastic. But it's not like something you can't deal with. You have time to deal with it and figure out how to get it lower and how to clean your water to prevent all that. But that's from drinking water at 1 part per million. So if you had it down to 0.05, it's really not.
And what would your blood level be if it was at 105?
Well, probably about a fifth of that. But when the water's at 1, your blood level's 0.2. And yeah, it affects your thyroid long term. It affects your mental IQ. It goes into your bones, like I showed you. But it's not something that's going to kill you when it's 0.05 in the water. But then the other data from the kidney dialysis ward is that when they infused 0.2 directly into the hemodialysis unit that doesn't take out any fluoride, they didn't see any problems that they were aware of. And those are people without kidneys. So, but because it's 0.2, they are going to have long-term effects on IQ, bone, and everything else. But these are probably adults that have no kidneys. They have this kidney disease, and that's the least of the kidney doctor's worries. But then, if you let the blood level get up to 1, then that's what happened in Chicago when the kidney ward discovered that their deionizing unit that was designed to remove fluoride, it had a malfunction. And the fluoride that was trapped on the deionizing unit fell into the water, got out for reasons I still don't quite understand, but it killed 3 people immediately, just the fluoride coming out of the resin that they were carefully using to defluoridate the water before they infused it into people. And so he doesn't recommend using these deionizing units anymore because of that. So we know from those accidental data that 1 part per million in the blood kills you in probably a month. If you kept doing that for about a month, you would get killed. And then the other accident was, of course, at Hooper Bay, where the blood level was like 3 parts per million, and I showed you on that chart. That precipitates the calcium out of the blood and your heart stops. You have immediate heart block.
So in the glacier water, what level is in glacier
That's below 0.05, because that's the new type of RO.
Do they have a way to measure it to 0?
Not really. I mean, my instrument costs $350. I can get down to 0.04, but you'd have to spend thousands of dollars to get it a lot lower than that. They do exist, though, but they still can't get down to 0. No, they use the same one I use. They only can detect it down to 0.05.
Is there any truth to something I've read or heard that Coca-Cola has to eliminate the fluoride from the water before they make their Coke?
Well, I think what they do is they use, they make Dasani water and Pepsi makes Aquafina. And those waters I've tested, and they're 0 fluoride because they use the new RO on the city waters that they come from to make them fluoride free. I don't know if that's the reason they did it, but they are fluoride free. But then there's a quirk with the Coke and the Pepsi. Pepsi from New York City has the same level of fluoride as in the city water. So it depends on where it's bottled and then Coke is about 0.2, but I think I've been told from other experts that it comes from the phosphate syrup.
Can you put that fluoride Coca-Cola in aluminum cans and
No, I don't drink. I know a lot of people do, but
can that poison be okay?
plus it's acidic, so it's just gonna. I mean, you don't want a can that's been sitting around for months and months, or in the heat. Heat really does it. Yeah.
So if someone called our office and said, what's the best way to filter out fluoride, what would you answer them?
It depends on what your goal is. If you want your whole house defluoridated, or just your sink, or it all depends.
Well, what's for the whole house? Yeah, you both. Yeah.
Well, for under the sink, probably the best would be the $165 GE profile, because that not only takes out fluoride, it also takes out the silicic acid that the bone char doesn't. If you had an old house with old plumbing units, and it takes out a lot of the things that bone char doesn't take out. So that's the plus for the RO. Yeah, I would get a charcoal filter because it won't take, the RO won't take out the chloramines and the chlorine and all that stuff, and the bromates that are not a good one anyway. There's some charcoal filters that aren't very good, but the ones that are really nice and packed properly, like one is from Aqua Flow Water. Mark Hutman does a lot of work on those. And he always puts those, he deals with clients up at Big Bear where they have 6 parts per million natural fluoride in the water. And all the kids run around with tooth fluorosis and all this stuff. And so the parents don't want them exposed to that anymore. So he usually uses the bone char and carbon block for the whole house, and then an RO for under the sink. That's the trouble with bone char. It gets expensive. We have a dentist in our group, San Diegans for Safe Drinking Water, and he's been doing it, but he's a dentist and he has a lot of money. So he spends about $3,000 every 2 years. No, it's Dr. Banks. But he spends $3,000 every 2 years, and you have to monitor it to know when to change it and stuff. But he's doing whole house with bone char.
So that's the only way you can do whole house.
No, there's other ways. Like another dentist that I know, for his whole building, he has a big giant water distiller. Professional industrial size water. He just uses distilled water. He runs it through all the piping in his whole building. But I don't know how expensive that is. Or you can also do whole house RO, like Roger Hitchcock does that. But it's so expensive, he had to put it in his house mortgage. It's like $20,000, and there's a lot of wasted water in the whole house.
The company I contacted in Temecula that manufactures bone char filters, water systems. That's a big company. Wasn't really to make something for
Well, the public can go into the big industrial place called Carbon Resources in Vista. They have the largest supplies of carbon-based and bone char-based filter media. They sell it to restaurants.
Vista, what was the name of it?
Carbon Resources. But the trouble was, when I was trying to get my whole house done, I got my own tank. It's called Brymac. It's bone char made in Scotland. They call it Brymac. So I filled the tank up, and it was defluoridating the whole house water, but it only worked for maybe 3 or 4 months. My kids would take these long showers. They moved out now. But I mean, it was just, a pain. Every 3 months I'd have to go out and dump the tank out, put it in. Well, it got worse because Carbon Resources decided to save money. They started getting bone char from Brazil instead of Scotland, and it doesn't even work. It's still cattle bones that's charred. It looks like, nice, clean, dark sand. It looks exactly the same as the real Brymac from Scotland, but it doesn't even bind the fluoride. So it's younger cattle that they use. There's something weird about it. It just doesn't work. And I told them that. It took them 3 months to figure out that I was right. And they finally wrote back and said, "Oh, you're right. It isn't working." I go, "Well, yeah, I know." And then, so they switched back to the Brymac from Scotland. But Scotland's been doing it for 80 years. They take animal bones from India, because India, they revere their cows there, as you know, and they let them die of natural causes, and they don't care if you take their animal bones. So India gives them away to Scotland, and Scotland's the only place that knows how to do it properly. And they bake them, right pressure, temperature, So all this, and it comes out as nice, clean little powder, and then it's all sterile and everything, and then it does work. It filters, sucks out all the fluoride. But a lot of people get scared, saying, well, what about all the animal stuff that may be coming out of it? I go, well, if you've ever eaten a cookie or anything that has white sugar in it from America, you already are eating stuff that was filtered through that same stuff. Because the white sugar industry only uses the Primac to filter brown cane sugar to turn it into white sugar. Nothing else works. And they don't even know why.
So what about shower filters?
Yeah.
Shower filters are rough because the speed is so fast, the water speed. Now, if you use bone char in a filter on your shower, it could work if you turned down the slow speed so it was more like you were filling a glass of water out of your sink. If you took an easy shower like that, it could still work. You can make your own. I mean, if you call... Well, no, I mean, you can install your own after you buy it. Yeah, but they sell them for under sink use, but you can use it in the shower. Yeah.
There should be some corporate sponsorships with some of these companies, which could drive a lot of business.
Or if you had a shower wand, it'd be easier to hook up one of the drinking water filters with plunger right there and just use a wand.
You know, the district I happen to live in, the San Diego Water District, it does not add fluoride at this time. Is there something else that we should be really concerned about? That water coming right out of their tap?
Well, the usual issues are the arsenic and the uranium. But I would look at your specific regional water quality report. You know, they have to be public. And just go there. The one I showed you at the beginning, that I thought was going to cover everybody because it was. I don't have it on here. Yeah, I looked at the Otay, Miramar, and Alvarado. You're not in any of those. Huh?
San Diego Water District.
Oh, San Diego. Well, fluoridation is coming to San Diego. People are still protesting, but it was already decided by the water district. Even though I wrote to them many times, they said, oh, we're not going to fluoridate. Now they're fluoridating. So that's going to come pretty soon. They already, in Encinitas and that area, Leeuwenhoek, were halfway fluoridated in the summertime when your water reserves are low. And they would import it from Metropolitan where we get our water. And it would come up, I've monitored, it would come up to about 0.4, sometimes 0.5. But the rest of the year it's down at 0.2, where it belongs. But they are going to start fluoridating, at least according to...
I can still some showers until it's over.
Yeah. Well, the main thing is no fluoride toothpaste and no fluoride drinking water, and that makes your blood level plummet way, way lower just from those two items. The showering isn't so bad. I use drinking water to brush my teeth. I'm just really total rebel. I don't want any of it. But most of it. See, the only reason people know that it goes into the skin is because of clinical experiments that were done a long time ago, where they thought fluoride in the bones might be good for you. People that had bone disease, they'd soak them in 10 parts per million fluoride water, but they found out that it goosed up their thyroid, so they stopped doing it. So we know it can get through the skin, but that's at 10 ppm. The water now is at 0.7. And it's not like you soak in it all day long. I know people in swimming pools do, but I mean, look at this guy who won all the Olympic medals in swimming. He's in Baltimore, and he's lived his life in the swimming pool, and he's still won these Olympic medals. I think the amount that comes in from 1 ppm water is low enough that it's not anything I'd worry about anyway from showering. Yeah, well, you also have to worry about people that are allergic. I have so many students. I mean, I've had at least 3 over the years that were allergic to the fluoride, and as soon as Escondido started fluoridating, they'd come in with skin that was all red all over the place, and it was painful, and I didn't know what to do because this one student lived in an apartment, and she wasn't in charge of the water. I said, well, at least go to the drugstore and get like some kind of a calcium-rich gel and put that on you when you're showering. And then, sure enough, it worked. She put it in her shampoo, and she came in, and everything was fine after that.
The water district, I just moved out of Leeuwenhoek, washing my dishes, and my hands were just burned.
Well, see, yeah, you probably do need a shower filter then. You should get set up for it.
Do you trust the tests from the water stores, what they report?
Which one? You mean you mean like an Ocean Beach?
Well, like just anywhere in the country, is we tell people go to the store and get their report.
Only if they list the number that it is, along with other things they've also tested. If they're just trying to claim that fluoride is fine, they have a number for fluoride only, well, it'd be a little unbelievable. But if they check for a lot of things and fluoride's on there, probably it's okay, because it's pretty simple once you have the equipment to measure the fluoride.
I'll ask you a question. What did you sign up in OTI?
Well, what bothered me about the OTI was, I put it on here, they have a high sodium level. I mean, it's not really, really bad, but it affects the growth of avocado trees. So it's a significant sodium level that we used to have, but when they lowered it or to 0.7, it reduced it back down to like 80 parts per million. But I noticed on the OTI report, it goes up as high as 115. And avocados just, their production is way down when there's that much salt in the water. And I don't know why OTI would be the only one that had that. It doesn't make any sense to me, but that was the level that they recorded on their recent report.
I know they have fluoride there.
Yeah, and come to think of it, this was dated 2011. That's the most recent one I could get from OTI. So it's going to be back down. Now that I think about it, that explains it. It just dawned on me. Because in 2011, ours was the same as OTI. But it went back down to around 85 after the city listened to Health and Human Services and lowered the fluoride back to 0.7. So, and that occurred only in 2011. So there's a good chance that might just go back down to a lower level. But
we do get a report, giving to understand, and we do get a report which tells you every value, including fluoride and the level.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you can look at the sodium.
Yeah.
And then the other thing in OTI was the halogenated methane derivatives from purifying the water with chlorine and bromates and everything that they do. It was 86, and the EPA only allows it to be 80 parts per million. So it exceeds the EPA allowed limit for that. I don't know why only that plant has it. Of course, they have different chemists at the different plants. But that was another thing. But those you can get out with the activated carbon block.
I wanted to ask you the second question with this one is about most of the patients will not be able to pay for a whole house system.
Yeah, that's how it is.
You talk about this other thing with RO and everything. What about the distillers? If they get a distiller to give it to the home, like a 6-gallon or 8-gallon?
Oh yeah, I have one of those too. You can get them for $99. You can get them from Ohio Distillers online. $99, and they're really state of the art now. I mean, if you put a gallon of water in there, you actually get a gallon of distilled water out. There's no loss. They have these fan blades. Yeah, Ohio Distillers is the company. Oh, and where'd that slide go? That slide should have been on here, but I noticed.
Good question.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Might sound over the top, but have you ever tested or did a comparison between south border water and water over here?
No, I never have done that, but I know that Mexico does not fluoridate their water.
We don't fluoridate. We have a lot of chlorine, but I know that there's no fluoride. They did add fluoride about 10 or some years ago to an area which is called Ensenada, and a lot of people were down there to buy it, so they banned it all over the country.
Somebody had some sense.
So, but not just worried about the fluoride, but other stuff that could be in it.
Yeah, down there, do they make it a law where you have to have public access to the contaminants that are measured?
I mean, I've never gone to a
Yeah, you'd have to take a sample and take it to a lab. There's a lot of labs that do it for probably charge $100.
I mean, I know that the companies that sell water do have to have their report, but at my house we have an RO system with carbon, with a carbon filter.
That's
and they've tested it, and the guy who tested it told me that it was good quality water, but he didn't say.
You didn't check the fluoride probably.
No.
What year was it made?
You mean the filter?
The RO.
The RO.
Or what brand it is? Or anything? Yeah. Well, the modern ones, more and more of them are able to get the small pore size.
So for a cancer patient, would you say RO is just as effective as distillation for the level of removal?
For fluoride, yeah. For fluoride.
For fluoride?
Yeah. If you get the modern ones. But, you know, I would still... Well, yeah, I think that's as long as you use the GE profile. I mean, it would take a tear in the membrane or some accident like that to have enough.
So only that one type, basically, you're saying?
Well, that's the one I've tested, but I've had other people in our group test. Oh, and I've also checked the one at Costco. Yeah, those two are tested and they're okay. As long as they're hooked up properly. You know.
How much water does the RO give you versus the reverse osmosis?
Well, you know, for every gallon you get, you usually, you know, lose a gallon down the drain, that kind of a thing, depending on the unit. But, you know, it's only the drinking water. It's not like your bath water, whole house water, laundry water, all wasted water. It's just the drinking water only that's wasted, so I don't worry about that.
Can a person put a unit like that on their shower, I mean, just before the water comes into the shower or the sink?
Yeah, a friend of mine who...
Kind of titled it on the fence.
Yeah, a friend of mine didn't want to be exposed to it in her shower, so she did that. She had a plumber hook up an RO unit that goes to her shower. Well, there you can take a normal force as long as you have a big enough tank that holds the good water for you.
Is there a chance of it malfunctioning and releasing all the fluoride that it was?
Well, the deionizers did that, and that's why they don't
For
use it in
RO, is
kidney
there a
ward.
chance?
Yeah, RO wouldn't do that,
Okay.
but because it always dumps the waste contaminant water down the drain while it's operating.
How often do you have to change the filter for the...
Well, we have one now that we've been monitoring for like 3 years, and the dentist had one that was from Culligan that was the good brand when Culligan used to have the good brand. He's had it for over 5 years without ever maintaining it, doing any maintenance at all.
Oh, so you just have to test it to see.
Yeah.
So when people call us and ask, what do you think of X, Y, or Z brand, or what would we answer?
I usually don't like to complicate things, and I'll just normally say the GE profile.
Just say we don't know about other brands, but we know about this one.
Yeah.
They wanted to test it.
You mean for fluoride?
Yeah, and or overall quality of the water.
Oh, well, overall quality, usually the water is pretty good at least testing all the EPA-regulated contaminants. But, you know, they don't test for random things like the silicic acid that's also in the water when it's fluoridated. And some things they don't test for, but the water district reports are pretty good. But otherwise, you can go to a lab and have the water that you're worried about tested. But I would go to a soils lab, not the other kind.
Oh, what lab?
People that do soils testing, they test for minerals that are in the soil. They have the capability to test your water, and they would charge way less. They work for farmers and stuff.
So someone got a system, an RO system, and they wanted to double check.
Yeah.
They would go send their samples.
Mm-hmm.
You want to give people names of what are some of the labs.
I've never used one, but I know there's one in Chino. If you went online and just looked up soils, contaminant testing labs, stuff like that, there's several of them. I know one that's good in Chino. Yeah, just mail it in.
Provide testing services for the public?
Well, I do it for all my students. But yeah, I could do samples, but only for fluoride. I just have a fluoride electrode. That's mainly what I've been focusing on because I knew that was the stuff that. No. If it's a deionizer, it would, but you probably don't have that. A deionizer is the one they used at the kidney wards, and then it got filled and then killed people leached out.
Question. I have relatives, and they were born in Germany. And in Germany, you still, according to kind of law, you need to give fluoride to your kids in the first year, because they say it's good for their teeth and blah blah blah. And I, being a good mother, I nicely gave them the fluoride because I didn't know. And then I went to one of the really good dentists, and he said, stop giving fluoride to our kids. So I stopped it after half a year or something. It nicely clears out from their body, right? It's done.
Well, they probably didn't take it long enough to get to where the bone is really loaded up.
So nothing is going to happen. It's going to clear out.
Well, what happens is the stuff that's in the bone is pretty much permanent. It doesn't ever come out of the bone once it's in there. But unless you get up to like 3,000 parts per million in the bone, it's probably nothing I would worry about. Because you can't keep fluoride exposure at zero. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, deer out in the wild, they have some fluoride in their bones, stuff like that, because there's natural fluoride. You just can't keep it zero. But the people argue that the soft tissue fluoride can be removed. So that's when you stop doing it. Anything that was in their brain and bodily fluids everywhere else gets slowly leach out.
So it stays in the bone.
In the bone, it's in there.
Yeah, because it feels like the water now and now.
Yeah, really. Yeah, my brother had, I didn't have it, but my mom for some reason trusted his dentist to give him fluoride tablets when he was a kid, so he had those spots on his teeth are just permanent.
Yeah, it's terrible that you still have to do it, or they say
Yeah,
to
well,
you that it's doctors starting.
That's why I put a section in there on my paper that I just published, on the sodium fluoride. Because they're adding sodium fluoride to the water, which is a medicine you can only take by prescription. But the water districts don't even understand or don't care. They think the CDC knows more than doctors do. And so that's the trouble. Everybody's being dosed with sodium fluoride. But, the pills, even the pills that they used to give, or some dentists still give, were never approved by the FDA for ingestion. They're allowed by the FDA, but they were never approved because the clinical trials were not any good.
Are all, did Jeff Green's group, did any of that group ever get a test case? They were looking for somebody who was in the women's prison to bring a lawsuit saying,
I think they did, but
I'm not in control of the water. I
think they did.
I'm being drugged
but
against my will.
But he's very secretive about it.
I know they had somebody who was willing to fund some of the legal work. Go ahead, Diane.
Are all water distillers equally effective, all brands, in terms of removing fluoride?
I don't know for sure, but I would guess. Well, yeah, if it's a distiller, yeah. But I mean, this one that I use, I like because it's this one right here. It's shaped like a big coffee maker. But like I say, if you put a gallon in, you actually put a gallon of purified water out. There's no losses or anything. It's just because up in here they have a big cooling fan that takes the steam and just liquefies it right there.
So is it made by
that
Ohio distillers.
And how much was the cost?
$99.
$99. Okay, thank you.
So I use this sometimes. When I like to haul my water from either Palomar Mountain spring water or from Carlsbad, the alkaline water spa, because that's the water that drains out of the Cleveland National Forest, and it's a 500-foot deep well, and I checked that, and there's zero fluoride, just like water's supposed to be.
The only thing is if you have to deliver it in the one.
Then it gets pretty expensive. Well, yeah, if you use the right kind of plastic, it's probably okay as long as you keep it in the shade.
Well, that's it. How long stored?
As long as it's not in the sun, And the bigger the container, the better, because then it's less surface exposed to the water.
Do you have a list of water from those kind of companies that are okay?
Those kind where you haul your own water?
No, like you get it delivered, or you buy it at a store.
Well, those two deliver also. But those are the only two. It's Palomar Mountain Spring Water in Escondido, and then Carlsbad Spa alkaline water in Carlsbad.
Oh, but for the country?
No.
You don't know?
Yeah, I was just saying that I haul my own water from those two sources. But every once in a while when I run out, I'll use the water distiller in a pinch and stuff like that.
So what did you want to list of that?
The listing of just waters and liquids.
Yeah, it's on this handout. You guys, wherever it went. Yeah.
Do you know, you have Sweetwater, is your water provider, Charlotte? Sweetwater, is that under the OK Mesa, or if not?
I'm not sure where that cutoff is. I'm not sure.
Yes, there is fluoride that check.
Oh, okay.
You probably know Portland recently voted against like the fourth.
Yeah, I put that statement in my article.
How come they have the ability to vote against it when
We did too. San Diego voted against it twice.
We voted to make it illegal a long time ago.
We also did that.
And then they still did it.
Yeah.
So everywhere that they add it, are they getting the opportunity to vote?
No, in Washington, the Supreme Court in Washington overruled the citizens' ability to vote on an issue in their local town. But if it came up as a statewide referendum, then they are allowed to vote. If it was the whole state that got together, then they could vote on it. But individual cities are forbidden, or in Washington, but not here.
How
We're
did
not
Portland
forbidden to vote. But it's just that here it takes a huge referendum with massive numbers of signatures just to get it up for a vote. But I mean, it was a miracle that San Diego was allowed to vote twice, and both times they voted against it. And Jeff Green and Anita Shattuck.
So once it's in, it's like a lot harder. Once it's already.
Yeah, but I mean, LA might. I have a inside scooper type guy who works for Vallecillas Water District where I live, and he said that he thinks that LA may stop the practice pretty soon because they ran out of money. It costs $3 million every year just to buy the chemicals.
Oh wow, I figured they.
And they kind of ran out of money, and so they're freaking out about that. So they said, well, maybe we just let this go. And so, in spite of all of us, we don't count.
It's
If they run out of money, it might stop.
isn't it?
Yeah, that's just a waste.
A lot of the patients are kind of tight for money a lot of the time, so they'll choose between a distiller or a RO unit. What's the likelihood of a membrane breaking in an RO?
I've never seen one break in the household one, but like I say, I'm pretty confident that the big units they have in Miramar, at Mira Mesa, where they're trying to, do the toilet to RO to tap, that's that big. But that's a huge industrial thing. And then the distiller would be pretty much full. But you can also go to the Glacier water machine at the grocery store. It's only $0.25 and you get a gallon of water. Most of my students don't have any money, that's what they say.
And that is nationwide?
No, that company is from Vista, but they're spreading out as far as they can.
You mentioned the water store at Ocean Beach. That's where I get my water. Do you have any insight?
All the stuff that students have brought to me from there is checked out okay.
They seem like they do a good job of testing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, they're pretty sensitive to all this. I mean, there's millions of people against this and hate it, and so they're doing everything they can to steer clear of it.
I mean, is there, to me, obviously to everybody that is against fluoride, it's ridiculous logic, but do states or cities, do they profit from putting the fluoride into them? Do they get a commission from it?
Only temporarily. The reason San Diego started, even though we voted against it twice, is because Supervisor Roberts and Mayor Sanders, they had $3 million, even a little more than that, in their front of their face to play with, versus listening to the voters. So they took the money, fluoridated the water because it was tobacco tax money that was donated to them from First Five, because there's people who actually believe that fluoride belongs in kids' teeth. I mean, they actually truly believe it, and they think if you speak anything against it, you're just a weirdo. And so they just listened to those voices instead of everybody else, including the voters, and took the money. But it was only a temporary gain, because soon San Diego will force the same dilemma as LA. They're going to have to come up with millions in order to continue the thing. But what happens to most of these cities, like in Sacramento, when they were told to fluoridate, what happened is the people who make them fluoridate don't accept any liability for it. And so they make the city sign all liability for if there's any damages or anything, the city has to pay for it, even though they were ordered to do it. And so they also make them sign a contract, believe it or not, that you have to supply the fluoridated water for a minimum of 10 years, otherwise you have to give the $3 million back. But they've already spent it to fluoridate the first few years. So LA and San Diego are going to face the same problem that Sacramento's facing. But really that's just extortion. And if it was a rational judge, you would see that, and you should be able to back out of it, because you would just use the argument that, well, they didn't tell us about all these side effects, and so the contract is null and void. We don't have to fluoridate for 10 years. You would think.
Sacramento doesn't fluoridate?
No, they do, and they think they have to for 10 years because of the coercion, but they really don't. I mean, we have a state law in California that mandates fluoridation, but they don't even list the chemical that's supposed to be used. They don't mention the word fluosilicic acid at all. They just say fluoride. Well, there's no such thing as fluoride. There's calcium fluoride, there's arsenic fluoride, there's fluosilicic fluoride. You can't just go buy a bucket that has fluoride in it and nothing else. It's not possible. So the law has no meaning. You can't interpret it. I keep telling that to people. Mayor Sanders ad nauseum, and he didn't care. He just kept saying, well, the state's making us do it, and then he took the money. But the weird thing is he let me meet. I badgered him so much because I was trying to protect San Diego from all this. he finally arranged a meeting to have me meet with his public utilities director. So I said, fine. So I went down there, and I had detailed summaries that I could cover in an hour from like 8 different textbooks written by scientists against fluoridation and all the reasons why. I explained that all to the public utilities director, and he was a Navy guy, and I told him my dad was in Pearl Harbor, blah, blah, blah. We kind of made friends a little bit, pseudo-friends. And then at the end of all that, well, in the middle I had said that the FDA has never approved this, of course, you know that, for ingestion in the U.S. And he interjected and he said, well, I don't care what the FDA says, you know, if I want to put something in the water, I'll do it. FDA has no bearing. And so I said, well, okay, yeah, that's true. I mean, I could walk down the street and break that window and steal stuff. I can go do that too, but it doesn't mean that it's right. Then anyway, by the time the hour was done, I showed him all these graphs, charts, showed him what happened to fluoride once it enters the different body compartments, different pHs, the different forms it has, all this stuff. He finally, at the end, he just goes, well, when I fluoridate the water, I'm not going to drink it. And so everything I explained amounted to a hill of beans. And so after that, what happened was I got a hold of the Presidio Sentinel newspaper. I don't know if you've seen that newspaper in downtown. But that editor really liked what I was telling her, and she printed 3 front-page articles all over the place telling the city what's wrong with fluoridation. She believed me, which is unusual for a newspaper. And then, so that was kind of cool. And then the next thing I know, that utilities director resigned because he didn't want to be in charge of fluoridating the city. He didn't want to be blamed for it, so he left and took a job in East Coachella Valley somewhere. But now his replacement is worse than he is. And he just thinks you have to fluoridate. And so, talking to these people is like talking to a brick wall. I don't understand why. But like the worst experience I had was with the California State Chief Fluoridation Officer. When LA was about ready to start, so that was 2007. I met with him, explaining why I was totally against it in writing ever since the Hooper Bay fluoridation disaster. And he says, oh, well, you know about that, don't you? And I go, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, that wasn't the water district's fault. I go, why is that? The water district put the fluoride in the water. He goes, yeah, but the guy who died, his wife was a nurse, and she should have known that when he threw up the water, that was a sign that there was too much fluoride in the water. And so she shouldn't have given him more water, even though he begged for it because he was thirsty. And so, but I knew that there were 300 people poisoned in that incident, so I said, well, wait a minute. Are you trying to tell me the lady's responsible? She went all around this town and poisoned 300 people with fluoridated water? Is that what you're telling me? And then he realized how stupid he was being, and he shut up, and he never said anything for 3 months. But after 3 months, he kept saying the same old thing. It wasn't the water district's fault in Hooper Bay. And now he's retired and left, and believe it or not, his replacement is an MD, and he's even worse than he was. And I had a meeting with him when Carlsbad had that big cancer cluster. I don't know if you saw that in the papers. This little school district in Carlsbad was losing all these kids to cancers. And so what happened was he was hauled down because he's supposedly the state, officer who oversees cancer incidents and stuff like that. He's an MD. Gave this big old spiel to the newspaper and God and everybody just about how everything's fine, don't worry about it. But his own data showed the exact opposite, because in Carlsbad, the kids there used to have the lowest skin cancer rate of the whole county until after fluoridation and all these other things started. And now, I should say that differently, after these school districts were built on soil that I think was from the arsenic that was used on the soil. It's been banned now, but the farmers use the arsenic. And so after that, all these cancer clusters came out. His own data showed that it went from the best village in the county to the worst, the highest cancer incidence rate in the whole county, Carlsbad. And those kids were getting it. But I researched that, and I found out that the CDC in 2005 published a whole study on that, where they found out that all these schools that are built on farms that used to use the arsenic insecticides, the cancer rate is like 3 times higher in the kids that attend those schools. That's been known since 2005 to some people, but not me or everybody else. Now it's been banned, and nobody uses it anymore, but these kids are out there, they would plant vegetable gardens, because the kindergarten teachers wanted to teach them how to plant, and they were eating the dirt along with the carrots and stuff like that. And I think that's what was going on, but the newspaper downplayed it all, but the school got scared and started eliminating all the fluoride, all the arsenic from the dirt, because they were they found out that it was higher than normal levels. So. But the cancer guy who was down there, I said, well, gee, since we're having this big cancer cluster here, nobody knows why. Can't we at least have a moratorium on fluoridating Carlsbad's water for a while until we figure this out? It's just another insult. And then his own response was, fluoride is good. And I said, well, what about Dr. Hurd, whose idea it was in 1940, who 5 years later changed his mind because all the teeth were getting crumbly teeth interiors from the fluoridated water, and he changed his mind, didn't like it, and he goes, he had the same answer, fluoride is good. Everything I said, he would just say, fluoride is good, like a little robot. And I went, what is this? So I just left. So that's our state cancer guy, Department of Public Health.